So today we're going to be talking about adding the human touch to IoT and smart home. So what can be more personal than your home? Outside work, it's the place where you spend most of your waking and sleeping hours. It's where you create your fondest memories and mark major milestones in your life. Smart home devices have the potential to add to those experiences, but how do we not only make them more personal, but intuitive enough so that using them doesn't disrupt our birthday parties and barbecues? And how do we make sure that our private memories stay that way? So we have several distinguished guests here to talk about the best way to add to the human touch and to smart homes and IoT. So let's bring them out now. All right, so if you could all we'll start over here and go down, introduce yourselves, and briefly tell us what you do and why you're here.
Hi, I'm Dave Selinger. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Sentinel, and we are building a next generation of home security, leveraging artificial intelligence to empower a monitored solution for the outside of your home.
Great. Hi there, I'm Deivasigamani, CEO and founder of a company by the name Intellihot. We build efficient, intelligent devices. So if you take showers and you heat your home, chances are that you've used a product. And I brought a little robot with me that I thought you guys could see.
Hi, I'm Boat. At Samsung, I run innovation programs at Samsung, specifically focused on smart home IoT and around the Family Hub smart refrigerator and how it's connected to the home.
I'm John Pleasance. I had the privilege of once being a colleague of Boat.
Yes.
Might be my big claim to fame, but now I'm the CEO of Brava, which is attempting to significantly advance the way people cook at home.
Great. Well, thank you all for being here today. So one of the big buzzwords we have here. One of the big buzzwords we have here at CES this year is AI. I think everybody is talking about it next to like 5G. So how is AI being used to sort of make a more personalized smart home, and how is it being used, and sort of what are the hurdles that need to be overcome to it really to become sort of a seamless experience? So, I mean, if we want to start here and maybe work our way down, then
I'll go first. So I've been doing AI research for about 20 years. I started out at Stanford, where I did robotics and artificial intelligence research, and then actually ran the first AI group at Amazon almost 20 years ago. So I've been following the field for a long time, and for those of you that aren't following it very closely, it's a field that over its entire lifetime has kind of these ups and downs of media coverage, and 99.9% of the time it's just massive hype, which exceeds the reality. And so as this new phase of AI, deep learning, kind of emerged, I kind of just assumed it was kind of the same thing. I will tell you though, again, having been doing this for 20 years, that this one's kind of cool. It's real. It's the first time we've seen huge step functions in the quality of artificial intelligence as it relates to voice functionality and as it relates to image recognition, which you guys see, right? You see that on Facebook or Instagram where it's able to tag your friends. You see that when you use Alexa, and we heard that, right? It's really one of the most amazing technical transformations we've had a chance to see, and so I'm pretty excited about it. At our company, I'm a very practical person because there's lots of like magical stuff you can do, but I like to build businesses, and so we're using AI in a way that makes something accessible that was way too expensive before. So we do live video surveillance with active human guards to protect the outside of the home, which any of you guys could have bought 2 years ago, as long as you were willing to spend $5,000 a month. I did a poll of my friends and neighbors, and I didn't get a whole lot of takers. And so we use AI to filter out a bunch of noise and then to make something that was really unattainable now at a $50 a month price point, which makes this incredible value available. And I think that's one of the neat things that technology can do. In terms of making it more personal and kind of personable, one of the things that we do too that I think I'm really excited about is connecting that with people. So we don't just use AI to replace human jobs. That's one of our big mantras, is to use it to create human jobs. So we still employ dozens of human security guards that, for example, my daughter went outside. She likes talking to our security guards. They're live on our home. And so she went outside after Christmas and she did our customer service sign, which you do this in front of our cameras, and then 5 seconds later a security guard comes on board and says, "Hey, how are you doing?" And she goes, "Look at what I got for Christmas." And she'd gotten the James Charles palette. I don't know if you guys have kids that are following James Charles, but like, let me tell you, that took like 3.5 weeks to get that freaking thing for Christmas. She was so stoked. And the guard over the cameras on our outside her house was like, "Oh my God, is that the James Charles palette? How did you get that?" And she was enthralled, right? And it's those kind of magical moments that if you can use technology to proliferate that through communities and through families, I think you can do really amazing things with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, David, I pretty much agree with what you said. I think the word AI has been used a lot. And, when we think about everything we do as human beings, everything, you can fundamentally, essentially divide it into two, right? We do things either for pleasure or for pain. And before I got on the stage, I was trying to fight a cold. I was like, so finally I went down, I try to avoid taking medicines as much as possible. I went down and got myself Tylenol. So when we think about AI and how can it improve human life, and I don't know if you heard of David Suzuki's story about the planet and how bacteria multiplies. Anyway, real quick, it's a story about if human beings were bacteria and we consume all these resources, and the test tube was half full at 59th minute, right? At the 60th minute, the test tube was going to become full. But at 59th minute, you go to the bacteria and you say, "Hey, bacteria, we are all going to be gone in the next minute." What do you think the bacteria would say? They say, "You idiot, we've been around for 59 minutes and we still got half the test tube left. We're going to be okay," right? So when I think about AI, when we think about IoT, the question, why we came together as a company really is, it's a little bit different than human touch. In fact, it is sort of being behind the picture. We'd like to think about ways on how can you use AI to mitigate a lot of pain. So pain in this case would be how can we utilize energy wisely? What can we do to put things that you really don't have to touch? Imagine you're a NASCAR driver, okay? You make a lot of, I think, left turns, okay, or right turns. If your car could tell you, you know what, you've done 200 laps, your right tire is going to go, you should pull up in the next 3 laps, and somebody automatically changes the tire, and you add in all this intelligence to do that, that is what I would want AI to do. And I think the cool thing about what you said is, 10 years ago or 15 years ago when we talked about this, there weren't a lot of deployment of sensors. There were a few sensors that were on discrete devices at discrete places. They were all working together. I can see a world where there is a plethora, a lot of sensors that are coming in, and there is technology being written and networks being formed so that all these things could work together. So I think in the next 10 years, I see a world where hopefully we will not exceed the 1.5 degrees by 2030, and then do a lot of things behind the scenes. So that's what AI means for me.
So obviously Samsung has a lot of very personal touch devices, with your hub fridge and many other things. So I guess you guys have been thinking a lot about this. So I guess
Yeah. So the way we look at it, there's 2 layers in Samsung and 2 platforms that we're working on. One is our connectivity platform. I think with all the connected devices in the market today, it's actually become very complex. So Samsung's goal is how do you make it easier to onboard any devices, right? So onboard security devices, onboarding ovens, onboarding heaters, onboarding cameras. How do you make that very, very easy so that my mom can actually figure it out? And today it's actually very complex. The second layer is once you have all these things connected, how is there intelligence around it? And the intelligence may be on devices, and it also may be on content. So let me give you an example of that. So on our Family Hub fridge, the end user creates content, right? They bookmark recipes, they have shopping lists, they write memos, they write notes. So how do you do interesting, delightful stuff for the family on a screen like that? Whereas like suggesting If something's going to go to waste, how can I actually cook a meal out of it? Or can it predict what I'm going to buy on Friday and create a shopping list for me, and maybe even order it from Amazon or Walmart or any of the other retailers? So it's actually connecting all these pieces together and making people's lives easier. And it's literally like saving 10, 15 minutes of your time. People want to save time and they want to make things easier in their home. So how can we actually help with that? So it's connecting all the devices and all the experiences to bring delight in the home. And that's our focus.
So I'm not sure how many of you got a chance to check out Brava's booth, but I was there yesterday, and they cooked up a nice little New York strip steak, perfectly medium rare. And I think there's nothing more personal than how you want your steak cooked. So I mean, can you talk about how you were adding the human touch to?
Yeah, as much as I would love to believe that everybody tried the steak and salmon yesterday at our booth, I'm sure it's a small percentage of people. So let me just take 2 seconds and describe what we do. And we're really excited about AI and what it can do for Brava and what it can do for all the companies that are represented here. But honestly, we are at the very first step of it in our own company right now. So what we do is we have a countertop oven, and it cooks with infrared and visible light, which gives you better tasting food, faster. It's smart, so it's very easy. It's kind of a you press a button and it magically kind of comes out sort of system. But what's really happening underneath there is we create recipes, and people think of recipes as photographs and text, but underneath our recipes is code, is algorithms of what to do with the bulbs to fire to generate a meal. And you can get it on your app or you can get it on the oven, but you basically, you get that recipe onto to the device, and then we tell you, please put ingredient A in spot 1 and put ingredient B in spot 2. And if you do it correctly, it comes out great. So it's awesome. But what we don't do now, and where machine vision will get much more interesting, is we have machine vision as an example in the oven, but we're not using it for food identification right now. We don't have a neural network that's built out back there that can basically skip a step for you. What I'm really excited about is we have a great culinary team, some of them I can see out there right now, that really work their asses off to build what they think are the perfect recipes for people. But 2 things. As you said, there's nothing more personal than how someone likes their steak, or how, to what degree of doneness is the yolk of a fried egg. And so how can the system learn not only what people personally like, but how to improve our recipes? Right now, we basically code in recipes, and if you, again, follow instructions, it comes out great. But doesn't mean we're perfect, right? We see so much data coming out of this device. In one single cook, we see thousands of images of what happens to the food. So the machine is rapidly going to become more intelligent than our own presumption coming out of the gate. How can the machine continually learn and get better and better based on all the activity of the community using it? We are at the very first second of that. Right? We're not doing that right now, but that's what the next couple of years holds for us.
All right. So anybody here who has kids knows that when you go to launch your Netflix app, along with all your suggestions for Star Wars films or whatever, there's going to be Disney cartoons or something like that. How do you make a smart home personal for multiple people and still get it to be personal for everybody?
I'll just start. We can go back the other way.
We'll
Mix it up a little
work
bit.
back this way, yeah.
Again, we don't do this today, but we know, for example, we've had the device in our home for quite some time, many months, and I have 5 people in my family. We all use it, and we all have different preferences and different desires, and we use it in different ways. We don't currently have a profile system. We don't recognize someone when they go into the oven. So I see a day in the not too distant future where my daughter walks up and it's going to identify, hello, Josie, do you want your quesadilla today the way you like it? And it's going to be a completely different cook and response than if my son James came in, who wants X, Y, or Z. So I think the notion of personalization and adaptation is really important. And again, it's sort of in the roadmap of where this can head for us.
So on the Samsung side, what we do is within our Family Hub system, you can actually create user profiles for different family members. So you can have mom, dad, kids. You can add in your parents as well. And each of them can have their own profile with avatar, screen name, and we also have voice ID based on Bixby. So if you want to identify each user in the home based on their voice to interact with the refrigerator and get your own personal content, you can actually do that. So as an example, in my home, I've connected everybody's calendar up into my Family Hub, right? And then you can see it as a group calendar. I can see when people are free, but sometimes I just want to see my content, or I want to see memos that my kids wrote to me on the Family Hub. So all I have to say is, hi Bixby, show me my calendar. And when it hears that, it identifies both, and it only shows both's agenda. And if I say, show me my memos, it'll only show me memos that have been addressed to me, whoever actually wrote them. So there's a personal touch there. And we have authoring as well. There's a whiteboard app where you can actually do drawings, and kids actually love those. And then they can identify who actually created that artwork, and then you can share it out with family and friends as well. So it's all profile-based and identification-based on Bixby Voice.
So I'm going to tell you, we have taken a little different approach to that. So, for example, what you see here next to me is a little, we call this the telebot, a little robot for your basement. You know, if you're from the Midwest, you have a basement. What this device does is it sort of personalizes machines. So this starts monitoring your water heaters, furnaces. It also sniffs the air for gas leaks, water leaks, carbon monoxide leaks. And then just like the car example I gave you, if you took showers every day between 7 and 9, this would know it. In fact, it'll know what components in the furnace or water heater is being used. And then it starts making predictions on, okay, in this house, in your house, maybe you take showers at 1 o'clock. In your house, maybe it's at 8 o'clock. And based on their usage patterns and how much water they consume, sort of personalizing data, it starts making predictions on when stuff is going to need serviced or when stuff is going to fail, or certainly it'll inform you when stuff has failed. And so internally, we call it, when we think about AI, kind of making a loop back to AI, we think about application of AI in sort of two areas. One, if you broadly step back from IoT and you think about it, a lot of it is centered around telling you what you already know faster. So we call that the faster pigeon strategy. Stuff is broken, I tell you. But that's not where the fun is. The fun is where if I can tell you ahead of time what is going to happen, then there's a lot of value in it. And that's what we focus on by understanding machines.
So I'll be brief. I'll build off of what Tree said, actually. I think that personalization is built with a bunch of different components. My last company was a personalization company, actually, so I've spent a lot of time on this. But the first one's identification, the second one's profiles, and then the third one's predicting what you do with that. And all of those come back to AI, which is what you brought up. On the identification side, we've got everything from voice to facial, and then on the profile side, you can collect all that data through all the data collection, all the sensors that Boat mentioned. And then on the prediction side, that's both of these, right? In terms of being able to do that. For our company, we really focus on facial, being able to recognize people. That's really important because we're protecting the outside of the home, our job is to stop crime before anyone gets to the house. And therefore, it's very important that we're able to say, this is a member of the household. You probably don't want to call the police on this particular person. So it's incredibly important to do that. But again, I think the AI piece of personalization, like we're coming into a phase where especially the identification part of personalization is a step function better than it was 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what do you see as the biggest challenge for your respective companies or just in general towards making a truly personal smart home device or really adding that sort of human touch to things?
I'm going to start. Go this way then.
Yeah, we'll just keep sort of
and
snaking
I
it
think
back.
that segues directly, right? Like if you were to think about everything that you're collecting here, the number one thing is trust and security, right? If you have identity, you have all of the data collected in one place, and then you can predict what someone's going to do. The abuse of that in the context of trust, right? Like I think is just unbounded. I didn't see Facebook's portal product here today, and frankly, I was kind of glad not to see it. I consider that to be one of the worst products ever released in history. And no disrespect to Zuck or anything, frankly, WTF are you thinking? You just sat in front of Congress and had to testify about how you have mistreated the information of hundreds of millions of Americans and hundreds of millions of other citizens of the world, and you want us to put you inside of our homes. It's things like that are going to break an industry eventually, and I think it really takes a strong industrial stance that, you know what, I'm not going to partner with you, Facebook, because of that. That's not the stance that we need to take. If you're going to do that, if you want to have portal, take security seriously, right? Listen to your chief security officer, don't force him out. we as an industry need to take that stuff seriously. And there is nothing that will break us faster if we're collecting all that information and doing that type of prediction faster than not taking security seriously. Mm-hmm. So I'll get off my little soapbox. Sorry.
Well, it's a very important topic. Obviously, everything is connected, and as you know or may not know, if you drive alongside another car with a tire pressure monitoring system, you can actually see what their tire pressure is. It is that secure. So when we think about starting to control your homes or protect your homes or take over your mechanical rooms or understand how is equipment used, there is a lot of desire to protect it, make sure that the equipment does not get hacked, make sure temperatures don't go up. But for us, again, I'm making a full circle back to personalization. We are a little one step removed because for us, personalization really centers around the machine. We try to understand machine behavior, and machine behavior is driven by your behavior. So if you come into your homes at certain times, we know that through the way your machine interacts with you. And if you take showers at a certain time, we know that. If you take longer showers, as if you had a teenage son or daughter, I'm sure you can imagine showers are longer.
Or hopefully they are if they're a son, right?
Yeah, right. So, but making a full circle back, yeah, I think security is very important. Personalization, protecting that information is very important. And I think we are still at the first steps.
So I'll give you an example around food that we actually work on the Family Hub fridge. The first one is, it's around shopping, right? Pretty much 80% of the items you buy every week are the same from the grocery store. It's pretty much the same stuff. You buy the same brands, you buy the same cereals, you buy the same milk, right? So how can we actually predict for the user to build shopping lists for you based on your behavior? And there are certain products you buy monthly, there's certain products you buy every other week. So that's the first one. The second one is once you've actually purchased the items, what we do is we tag them with expiration dates and give you suggested expiration dates. And Family Hub then keeps track of that, and it'll tell you if you haven't used a certain item, it'll ask you to use it, so you don't actually have to throw it away. So we're actually trying to reduce food waste in the home, which is actually huge. In the US, about $2,500 for an average family if food is thrown away every single year. So how can we actually help people actually consume the products that they buy and actually throw them away? It's mainly around fresh produce. It just sits there and it rots. So how can we help tell the user something's going to go bad? The third one is around food inspiration. People cook the same stuff every 2 weeks on a rotation, especially busy families. So how can we provide food inspiration? We know the ingredients that you have. We know what you always buy. We also know what you always cook based on the recipes. So how can we give you inspiration to cook something a little different based on the products that you buy week over week over week? So that's what we're looking at.
Hey, Bo, from an environmental, sorry to interrupt, but from an environmental perspective, I just went to a landfill for absolutely no good reason. But the number one form of waste in almost every landfill in the United States is also food. So from an environmental perspective, I mean, that sings to my heart. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that statistic is I think it's 40% of all
It's 40%.
food,
That's exactly right.
is wasted, which is just remarkable when you think about how much energy goes into creating that food to begin with and how much waste it's. You're totally right. So on this question, I just sort of thought of, or we sort of think of, sort of three categories. I think the first one has been well covered in your example with Facebook, which is trust, right? There sort of has to be this initial trust in the system. But the other two things that we think a lot about are first, expectation. So everyone has kind of a very different perception of what a smart device is or what AI can do for you. So we could have a very simple recommendation engine that says, because you did this, maybe you like that. And some people would think that's pathetic and it's dumb and it's stupid. And other people would think, oh my God, that's kind of creepy. This thing is watching what I cook. And so you have sort of this human continuum, this continuum, if you will, of where people come down in terms of what their expectations for this are. But the third thing I think is how do you interact with that? Right, so we recently, just a few days ago, we actually, based on some data, changed a recipe, and it's better. But here's the problem: people knew it the old way, right? And so they interact with our device in a certain way where they compensate for it with their own adjustment. So when you make it better for them, if you don't have a relationship, if you don't have some sort of communication, it actually feels like it got worse because you changed it, even though you made it a bit better. So I think it's the dialogue that you have with it, and how do you do it in a way where you sort of walk people at the pace that they want, and they expect it, and they can actually interact with it in a way that's comfortable for them. That's the really tricky part of this stuff.
A few of you touched on this, trust issues, and obviously with smart home devices, they are collecting huge amounts of information, obviously, about your daily habits and things like that. And I have Alexa and Google Home in my house because I've been testing them out and things like that for work. But where is all that data? Like there has to be an implicit trust, obviously, with whatever company's products you have. But I think a lot of times people will just take them in and not even think about that. Where does, obviously privacy is becoming a big issue. So how do you establish that trust with the people who are purchasing your products, that the data that you're collecting is not going to sort of leave, a secure ecosystem? Aside from just, people being able to hack into it, or, the data just getting out there, a lot of these companies, sell this data as a revenue source. So where does that sort of transparency have to come in the process of when someone is purchasing your product?
We'll go back the other way, I guess. I think our challenge, to some degree, has a benefit of the fact that our device does not have a microphone. We do not have eyes out into the house. All we see is the inside of the chamber and what happens with the food that's inside of it. So while some people can be concerned about that, oh my gosh, the thing can see what we're doing, and we give the consumer the option to turn that off if they don't want it. But when we have it, it just makes the experience better. So we sort of have an easier road than if you're looking at everyone's yard and looking at the neighborhood. I think it's a tougher challenge. So I'll pass the baton on that.
Sure. So on the Family Hub side, we do collect a lot of data, and it's all user-generated data. So we have people's calendars, shopping lists, to-do lists. The fridge also has cameras in it, so you can actually see inside the fridge, and we store that information. And we have a lot of partners coming to us saying, hey, can you share what's inside the person's fridge to our AI system? And the answer is no, we're not going to do that, because we don't want to share that. It's very personal information of inside our fridge is very personal. Like, what do you actually have in there? So we don't want to share that. There's also, can you share people's shopping list? Unless it's consent-based, we won't do it. So that's something we're looking at. So how can we take a shopping list and convert it to a cart for commerce and grocery and pickup? It's not done by default. It's not shared unless the user actually consents to saying, yes, I want to share my data with Amazon. I want to share my data with Walmart. I want to share my data with Target to be able to do grocery purchasing. So it'll all be consent-based. Otherwise, we don't share any data at all that the user generates and creates on Family Hub. And this includes sensor data for refrigerators and washing machines, et cetera. So we have this concept of remote management. So the sensor data stays on the unit. It doesn't go out. It doesn't even go into the cloud unless the person actually calls an agent and says, can you please troubleshoot my machine? They have to give them a code. So then they can take the data, goes to the call center, and they can analyze it, figure out what's going wrong with the product. Again, it's consent-based, and it never leaves the actual product.
Mm-hmm. So I think, in terms of data, that obviously our product watches behaviors of machines and then figures out what is happening when, and is it what time of the day, what day of the week. So if this product is installed in your home, it could tell you how often you use the showers, when it came on, how long was it turned on for, was the occupancy rate in your house high, low. So there is a lot of interest in general. I don't think that, it seems to me anyway, that the current thinking that's around the laws that are in place fully captures what is coming. I don't think any of us know, in fact. All we know as good companies, ethical companies, is we do want to safeguard data that we have collected and we have received from our customers. However, again, John alluded, our job is a little easier because we watch machine behavior, but the commercial interest in the data could be sky high. Imagine you could send leads to service providers saying this component is going to fail, and the question comes, who do you send that to? Should I send it to the top 5 that I have a relationship with, or should I send it to somebody else? Should everybody else know how much energy you guys are consuming, or when your home is occupied? So there are lots and lots of issues that I think we are going to encounter. The only thing that we can tell ourselves is, as good companies, if the company is like us, we have a desire to be around for 100 years. So we got to do the right thing.
So I would dovetail off of what Shri said about good companies. You know, I've been in this privacy and AI space for about 20 years, and I watch it, and it comes up, and it's always talked about. It always goes away a little too fast, I think, and I think it really is incumbent on corporate decision makers to set a standard that is higher than what is required by the legal baseline. Because if you just stay to the legal baseline, I think we're headed down a path where the type of data we're collecting is pretty dangerous. So we have kind of 4 tenets that we do. The first one is do the right things, right? And the do what the right things are, the filter is if you told your parents about it, would they say that's the right thing, right? Like not in legal mumbo jumbo, but if you just like describe, here's how we use your data and here's what we do with it, and they say, God, you're selling it to advertisers without telling me and then following me around to the internet, like I think in general, my parents would say that's creepy, don't do that, right? And so that's my litmus test. The second one is how do you enforce and audit that? Do you make it so that your customers can, they can see how it's doing? Is it enforced in a way that's really clear and easy? So for example, we do surveillance, right? Like surveillance is probably the most sensitive of all the topics up here. And so maybe we're a little bit over the top in terms of how we think about how we do this. But I mean, my God, right? Like there's nothing more personal than doing surveillance. And so our enforcement is twofold. One is we don't do anything inside the home at all, period. We think that at this juncture, that's not comfortable to most consumers. And then secondly, we actually have all of the storage of your video is in your home. So if you want to shut it off, keep it running, but don't connect it to the internet, you're totally free to do that. You're always in physical control of where your data goes. Then the third rule, so first one is don't do bad stuff. Second one is enforce and audit it. The third one is how you communicate that. Privacy policies are a suck hole of brain power and I mean just a cesspool of badness, right, period. And it's great that we have them now when we didn't have them before and that there are privacy watch groups out there, but that cycle is ineffective and inefficient and it's just not accomplishing the goals we need. So our approach there is we have in every one of our legal documents a layman's summary of what we do and how we do it, and we're 100% transparent about that. And I think every company should start doing that because you know what consumer is going to really read a 300-page legal document on how you're going to use my data at Google so that I can search for Starbucks within a quarter mile. I mean, are you freaking kidding me? And then the fourth one we have is, again, because we're in surveillance, we think about this a lot more, is the alternative is China. And so we're building a private company to do surveillance because the alternative is the government's going to do it. And so we pretty fundamentally believe I would way rather have a private company that I can choose and have there's competition and there's forced transparency than having the US federal government, as non-functional as it may or may not be, doing that. And so those are our 4 rules around this. I don't know that that's sufficient, but I think that more companies should be thinking about it to that degree of detail and pushing themselves hard on that.
Well, thank you. Well, we have a few minutes here, so we can open up the floor for questions. If anybody has questions, is there a mic out there? Excellent.
Award for
All right,
fastest
so
hand.
yeah, this gentleman over here.
So talking about that trade-off between privacy and personalization, I'm wondering if there's a way to make things personal while still remaining anonymous. Is there a way for Samsung, for example, to not link to your social accounts, or maybe it recognizes your voice but it doesn't actually know your name or have your contact information and things like that? And is there room for a version of smart home that works that way, or do you think by doing that you're just going to miss out on all the great features and there's no good way to do that?
So on the Samsung side, specifically for the fridge and how it works, you don't have to connect your profile to anything. So the profile is actually local on the fridge. So I can add my kid, put in a name, give him an avatar, and I can call myself XYZ, sits on the fridge. The voice print that I do also sits on the fridge, so it's not even going to the cloud. So everything is resident right there because your interaction is local to the system. And you don't have to connect to any accounts at all. The one account you do have to create when you set up the fridge is the primary account to get the fridge going connected to Samsung account. But any other profile you create after that and all the voice prints you create are actually resident right on the fridge. And they're not identifiable by any account. So they all stay right there.
Are there any other questions? That gentleman right there.
Hi, Martin from Austria. So I was also particularly in the privacy field and IoT. So just challenging this question, okay, you actually, a normal user doesn't have any clue anymore what happens to his data where. At the moment he installs any third-party skill, there is no idea what happens. So how do you address this topic to really make the home still a trustworthy place?
So I think the question is when you add in third-party skills, is that right? From like on Amazon and things like that, how can you or add on? I guess say you have like a SmartThings hub or something like that, and you add on third-party devices. Is that sort of the gist of what you're saying? Like how do you ensure that when you add something else to your ecosystem that you yourself don't make, how do you ensure that that data still remains private?
So on the SmartThings side, depending who we're integrating with, the partner actually decides how much data they want to share with SmartThings. They may not share everything. So if you're connecting, let's say the Ring doorbell as an example, it's connected to SmartThings. Ring doorbell is not going to share all their data with SmartThings Samsung. So there's a decision that's made when you connect to an aggregation platform like SmartThings. The partner gets to decide how much data they want to share with the middleware like Samsung SmartThings, and then they let the user know when they actually onboard the device what pieces or what APIs are going to be used for the Ring doorbell. So the Ring doorbell example is they only share the notification, right? They don't know who the user is, they don't know where they are. None of that is transferred over to SmartThings. It actually remains on the Ring side. So each partner is actually different on how much data they want to share with the middleware.
I'm going to use a buzzword in kind of tackling that question a little bit, which is, and it's one that I'm not a super big fan of, but it's crypto is one of the ways that people are looking at ways to do that, which is to keep your profile information encoded and protected in blockchain type technologies so that you as the user are providing permissions all the way up and down in terms of where data access is provided. Now you can't still control things like once it's come out of the blockchain, they can still send it somewhere else. But there are people that are looking at that, and I think I don't know if anyone can say that that's the best word to throw out there, but it's one of the better ideas I have seen in terms of being able to protect personally owned information long term. I hesitate to throw that word out there, but it is one of the smartest ways that I have seen to do that.
I think I just add one thing, and I'm sort of going to underscore something David said a second ago. I think the most important part of this is leadership. It's us. It all falls back to us and what kind of companies we're going to work with. So we don't have a ton of other devices integrating with ours right now, but consumers can order food from us. We're not the fulfillment partner of that. So we have to choose somebody. So the data of their address, their name, what food they eat, that is being passed on to another company to fulfill that. It's our responsibility to make sure that company's not doing shitty things with it. If we integrate Google Assistant, we should be confident in what's happening with the data and our relationship and how that API works. So I do think it all comes down to the people who are us, this room, people who are sort of pushing and sort of pioneering this industry. We can screw it up if not only if we may do the right things, but if we work with people that are doing not so nice things, it's going to all fall back on us. We're all going to fall down. So I think there's a real commitment to it.
Yeah, I think, if each one of us thinks we have to be around for a long term, I think the only way to do this is to collaborate and do things effectively and really protect data. So one thing I'll add to what David said, in addition to, obviously, the weakest link is your weakest link. You could do all kinds of things, have tokens changing, which we do. You can have triple passwords, fingerprint, encrypted. But at the end of the day, it usually ends up being some kind of human error. So the thing that we do, and obviously our data is focused on machines. So to some extent, it is one step removed from you. So your behavior affects how the machine behaves, and that's what we learn. So what we do is we group machines together. So we kind of have an aggregated machine. So it's not particularly tied to one machine. So there is a lot of interest in the industry to know, in general, how is energy consumed. Is it at 6 o'clock in the morning? Is it 7? Is it high when it's cold? Is it high when there's a football game? So we combine the data so there is no individualistic nature to that. So that's one way how we protect information.
Are there any other questions out there? Or? Oh, yes, over here, sir.
Hi, my name is Baruch. I'm a product manager at Comcast. I've been really surprised by the breadth of device types that have integrated with Alexa and with Google Assistant. Less from a privacy concern and more from a strategy and data value concern. What are the upsides and downsides for some of you in those integration possibilities?
You want me to start? Okay. All right. So for us, again, our service is a little bit different. So we use IoT technology, but ultimately our business is a service model. So we don't have the same kind of like ring, there's someone at your door alerts that you would use for Alexa, because all of those alerts go to our guard station. So you don't, that was my wife calling, sorry about that. But other than that, I don't get alerts from my app. At all. So we're a little bit different. In general, my sense is that Google and Alexa have done something that, we brought up smarter things that people have been trying to do for 20 years, and they've done something pretty amazing. And I do think that in as much as you're looking at that value trade-off, for better or worse, you don't really have a choice if you want access to that value. And Google obviously doesn't spend any money at CES on promoting that. I was going to wear my white outfit up here. But I think it is pretty amazing, right? I mean, Smarter Things, I think, is probably one of the best examples. It's probably the single most successful example other than Alexa and Google Home, and it maybe got 1/100th of the way that those guys have gone. And so I would very much argue that the network effect on that ship has sailed, and you got to just do the best with what John and I were talking about in terms of having the leadership to be thoughtful about it.
Yeah, just to chime off on that, if there was no value, this ecosystem wouldn't have exploded, right? This is something that users want. There are thousands of skills being built. There are thousands of sensors, devices being deployed. They're all over CES. They're all talking to Google, Alexa, smart things. If there was no value, these companies wouldn't be out there, and the ecosystem would actually be dead by now. But there is a lot of value, and people are starting to trust it, and an entire industry is being built on it.
At Brava, we just integrated Google Assistant, and it looks like it's going to be terrific. It's the same kind of thing. I think we see it mostly as offense, not defense. We have to be concerned about all this data, but it's such a benefit to be able to voice control the cooking experience. I mean, it's because your hands have food in it. You have a tray in your hand, right? It's cumbersome to be balancing things and cutting things and whatever. So it's a really good use case to be able to have a different mechanism for controlling your device. So we're very excited about it. That gentleman right there named JD is the person who did it for us. He's a tremendous guy. Worked all over the holiday. That guy right there, he's awesome.
Yeah, just to touch on like voice and AI, we were at a Smart Kitchen Summit, and it was around just purely using voice to drive interaction. And we've seen that doesn't actually work everywhere. You actually need a multimodal concept, and you've seen that Amazon's come out with their new show product, Google's come out with their Home Hub, and a lot of companies are building off the Google Assistant, because a lot of things need a visual, especially like recipes, right? If the recipe just blabs out what you have to do, you'll get lost, because you have to keep switching between what's on the ingredients, you may be at a different pace. You actually need a visual component to actually see what's going on in certain interactions. So I think the future is definitely going to be multimodal as well, not just voice.
I think if I can, just to answer twice, I think that's such a good point, because if you're at CES 6 years ago, right, the whole concept was multi-screen. I don't know how many of you guys remember that, but the concept of actually multimodal, I think, is so much more powerful than multi-screen.
So when it comes to our products, we have taken a little different approach. Since our product literally touches people, right? You could be taking a shower. You don't want to get scalded, or for fun, you don't want to turn it off and get a cold shower, unless you want to play a bad joke. But so the approach we have taken really for the time being, and we don't see there is an immediate need. We have actually not integrated with Google or with Alexa deliberately, and we are taking an approach where we are kind of doing a wait-and-see approach to see how these systems integrate, how is security handled, and as somebody said, the pioneers get shot down first. So we're kind of watching, because if there is an accident, the consequences for our systems are tremendous. You could have an entire hospital shut down. You could have, if somebody scalded, somebody could die. So we are taking a very measured approach.
I think we have time for one more question. We could squeeze one in, but doesn't look like there are any. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming today and participating in this discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you all for attending too.